Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being there. This is Rafa once again with Mystic Times. I have the great pleasure to have my dear friend Darryl R. Schoon back on the show. Last time, the couple last times that you were here, we spoke about the esoteric stuff and our guides and well everything that has been part of your experience in the spiritism. No, it's not the correct word. I'm sorry. You can correct me. I always call it spiritualism.
The world of spirit. Yeah.
Correct. I always have the spiritism word. It's like installed, but I'm going to start correcting it. Spiritualism.
It's all right.
Yeah. And so we went to all of that more esoteric stuff. Is the point that I was trying to make. But today we're going to maybe talk a little bit about, you sent me an article that you wrote, which I haven't been able to read yet, but the title of the article is 2022 Countdown to Collapse. And so before we started recording, we were like going back and forth about like how to structure today's conversation. And I said that I want us to talk about the economy, because I'm scared a little bit about there's like so much change in so many different areas, like technology, etc., whatever. So, politics, society. There's been so much change, especially since the last time we spoke, and I want us to talk about this, but also like not so much focus on the title of the thing being the collapse. And I mean, I'm already scared. I can see people maybe being a little bit scared about it. And me especially, because I'm ignorant or illiterate on the ideas of economy, beyond the fact that I understand this, the whole thing to be a racket. So I cannot imagine ways to improve it. I hope you can share with us some of that. And yeah, without further ado, Darryl Schoon, how are you?
I'm fine, Rafa, and it's good to find you in good spirits. I mean, the last time we talked, I think, was before the pandemic or during it, and we're still here. All right?
Yeah, good for us.
It's good for us. What I'd like to do is tell you how I got involved in economics. I graduated in 1966 with a degree in political science from University of California, Davis. Never took one econ course in my life. Never cared to, all right? And then the next year I went to law school in San Francisco, 60s, San Francisco, LSD, hippies, all right? I took acid, dropped out of school, moved to Haight Street, and my life went in a totally different direction, all right? Now, how I got to become known as an expert in money started I believe, in 1991, when I heard the following words. Heard them. I wasn't thinking about money. I heard them. They came to me. These are the words that came. In times of expansion, it is to the hare the prize goes. Rabbit. Quick, risk-taking, and bold, his qualities are exactly suited to the times. In times of contraction, however, the tortoise is favored. Quick only to retract his vulnerable head and neck. His is the slow and sure is the preferable to the quick and easy. Comes a time, however, when neither the tortoise nor the hare is the victor. This is the time of the vulture. The vulture feeds neither upon the stored up wealth of the bear or the pastures of the bull, which lie buried deep beneath the rubble of economic collapse. The vulture feeds upon the denial of the ostrich. The time of the vulture is here, at hand. Rafa, 1991. I've been in prison for 6 years, meditating like there's no, one of my closest friends from law school, he came up and he said, Darryl, did you lift weights, in prison? And I said, no. And he said, why not? Marshall likes exercise. And Martha, my wife, is in the back seat. She said, they're too heavy. All right. She's always giving me an out. That was an out. That was, I did try it once. I was passed out. All right. But I did meditate. And I meditated, Rafa, like I had never meditated on the outside. Okay. And because of that, I got into this space that was stunning for a while. But that had nothing to do with this statement. I believe what it did do was open me up more. But those words came in 1991. Wow. I mean, Rafa, not out of nowhere, out of the world of spirit. Clearly, it was a message from spirit. And I didn't know what to do with it. In 1991, there's no sign of an economic collapse. It's certainly not on that order. And I get out of prison 6 months later. And the next few years, I tell Martha, I said, what am I doing? Studying the Great Depression and economics. I mean, I'm a hippie. And I'm going after it with a passion. All right. 1999, I make the acquaintance of somebody on the internet, Professor Antal Fekete. Brilliant. He wrote a piece on a gold site that was so stunning. I wrote him back and I just, said, I really admire this. He writes me back and it said, what is your interest in these matters? Holy smokes. Well, I'm an ex-hippie and I read your article. I didn't even write him back. All right. It was so daunting. Well, this guy, Professor Antal Fekete, was brilliant. And we became friends. I read all his stuff. And eventually, in 2007, my friend from law school, who asked me about the weights, he had put together a group called the Positive Deviant Network in 2004. All right. Marshall Thurber had made a lot of money after law school in real estate. And he totally changed gears. And he was one of the 4 people that gave $5,000 to publish The Course in Miracles. All right. He was on the cover of New Age magazine. Marshall was happening. All right. He became a friend and follower of Buckminster Fuller. He sponsored Bucky at his events. All right. I mean, Bucky died in 1992. I was at one of Marshall events and there was Bucky. Martha was there at that 1-week course. So that's how Bucky came into the thing. That's 1981. And in 1982, Bucky published his last major book called Critical Path. And in Critical Path, he said this. It's called, the introduction is called Twilight of the World's Power Structures. And he said, mankind is entering a period of unprecedented crises. This crisis is universally intended to transform humanity from a separate, ideologically biased, differentiated fragments into a comprehensive, interdependent, interharmonious whole, which will produce a world of abundance greater than it's ever known if humanity makes the right choices. What this economic crisis is about, Rafa, is a part of that crisis without precedent. Now, Marshall, my friend from law school, is an Aries, driven, Aries, driven, doesn't know how to turn it off. All right. And he hated what I saw that was coming up economically, hated it. And I would say, Marshall, you knew Bucky. Bucky wrote these words, unprecedented crises. Bucky had a sense of history that none of us had. He knew about all the pestilence and the wars and everything and all these horrible things in human history. And he said, we are going and entering a period of a crisis without precedent. Now, I know a lot about Bucky only because of Marshall. All right. I mean, I knew who he was. I had a glimpse of him. All right. In fact, I wouldn't even, I was at that conference. I knew everybody loved Bucky. Bucky talked about a world of peace, abundance, love. We're all one. We're on spaceship Earth. Designed the geodesic dome. All right. I knew that, Bucky. All right. But because of Marshall and his focus on Bucky, I realized there was a whole nother set. What happened is in 2004, Marshall puts this group together called the Positive Deviant Network. Dues were $5,000 a year. We met 4 times a year. All right. Marshall was studying positive deviancy. And it was a concept that he said described people who were at the fringe. All right. They were marginalized, but they had positive ideas. All right. And Marshall's theory was in times of great change, those at the center know nothing about what's going to happen. Those at the center are focused on trying to keep the whole thing from falling apart. But it's in a process of falling apart. Great change. Now, Marshall said all new ideas start at the fringe. Now, that doesn't mean every idea at the fringe is going to get to the center. But by the time the shift is over, the prevailing new paradigm will have started at the fringe. So this is what Marshall was studying. And he was also studying networking, how people come together, how ideas get, there's a science to it. Big hubs, small hubs, all that stuff. So Marshall formed this group because he knew a lot of strange people, all right? Very different kind of people, all right? I mean, there were people in there, there's 65 of us, and some were making 10 grand a month. Some were more. It was high achieving, out of the box thinkers. That's what Marshall thought, okay? So we go there, 2004. Very interesting group of people, all right? At this time, Rafa, I wasn't talking to anybody. That's why all you need is one way in. All you need is one door. All you need is one break. All right? That's all you need if you're going to get to where you're going to get to. All right? At this time, I mean, after I got out of prison, I'm a hippie. It's like my joke was, I fought the law once, screw it. I'm out of here. All right? So I basically didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't get along with anybody that, my close friends, that's what it was. But as far as the general public was, I could keep our conversation. Oh, wasn't that Ossobuco wonderful? I could keep it at the level of menus and restaurants. I didn't want to go any deeper because I didn't want to get uptight. All right. We'd go to parties and Marshall would say, don't talk about this stuff. These people would have a good time. I couldn't help it. Pretty soon people are moving away from me and drinking more than they usually did. Because what I knew about what I saw was going to happen, they didn't want to hear. And I understood it, Rafa. I understand people's feelings about not wanting to deal with what's unpleasant, with what's disruptive.
And also
right?
the Aquarian kind of power / curse of foresight, of seeing things long before they happen. I remember like nearly 8 or 10 years ago, I was thinking of starting a podcast because I was seeing so much in the world, this polarization between people, which 10 years ago wasn't that prevalent or that obvious, but nowadays it's like extreme.
Water. No, truly. And I got thrust into the economic thing way before anybody else did because of those words I heard. All right. What happened? It's all Dharma. It's all the path. It's all the path.
And can I ask you a little bit about those words? It's very well, of course, it's very fitting that it would contain animal archetypes or references because of the ideas of the market having the bull and having the bear stuff. But I'm curious, have you ever found out who spoke those words?
No. All right. No. All right. Which is very good. That's an excellent question. All right. In fact, it reminds me of, well, the digression is too big. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but excellent question. A great friend of mine later, who I was going to meet later after this thing happened, she was a spiritualist. All right. And I mean, she was into this stuff. And she met, oh, in fact, her name is, she was a healer out of India. Her name was, I forget her name. I had never heard of her. Never heard of her. All right. And we've got this TV program in Tucson where we're talking about all this stuff, which is you're into, the world of spirit. All right. And she starts talking about this person. All right. And and so Martha, who does the production, we had to label the interview. All right. And we never heard her. We told her this amazing story that happened in India, in Mumbai. She was at a conference in 1984 of world consciousness. This is 1984, Rafa. World consciousness. Some of the biggest luminaries on consciousness were there. All right. Well, Chakravarti, Sri Chakravarti. All right. And so there's Betty. All right. Just starting on her path, 3 years into this. All right. And she gets bored of the speakers. Oh, as she said, a lot of smart people saying a lot of smart things, bored her. All right. Then she heard that somebody was at the conference who was a healer. So she gets taken to this person's room. She goes to this room as the conference is going on. She's not speaking at the conference. She's just there. One of the speakers brought her. All right. So there's Betty in this room. Here's Betty, former Marine, all right, in PR. Now she's in the world of spirit. All right. In this hotel room in Mumbai. Okay. And she said the lady, Sri Chakravarti, was beautiful. Indian, long hair, sari, the whole deal. And these people were there, sick and stuff. And she was healing them. What Betty said she would do is she put one hand in the water and start doing alternate breathing. And she said the water started boiling. You could see flame. There's Betty telling me the story. All right. And I'm listening to it. I'm the straight man, Rafa, on her damn TV show in Tucson. All right. So I'm asking her questions and stuff like that. And Betty said, then this guy comes in the room and they hold him in a blanket, like they're carrying, like a stretcher. They're carrying him in. And he says to her, he said, I shouldn't have come to the conference. I have a heart condition. I'm about, I'm about to, need an operation, whatever. So she goes, she puts him down, makes the most. She sits down there, runs her hand over his body. And he says, there's nothing wrong with you. Now, what? And she does it again. She said, oh, you've got this thing here in your neck. Here, let me do it. And she does it. All right, touches his neck. Takes him out of there. Didn't even take him out. Betty said a couple years later, because she travels all over. She went to 120 countries. Spirit told her she was going to travel the world. She did. All right. And she sees a book in the bookstore at the airport. It's him talking about his healing. All right. Now, so this is what she tells me in this TV show. I don't know. This is a story Betty never told me, or she alluded to it, just went over me because she had so many stories. So we're trying to figure out her name, Sri Chakravarti. Never heard of it before. So we're Googling it. And you know what? A reference to her comes up. She's interviewed by Jeffrey Mishlove, which is how you found me on his TV program, Thinking Aloud. All right. Interviewed in the 1990s. All right. This is 2011, 10. Martha and I are doing this TV program. All right. Sri Chakravarti. But the question is what you asked me. Betty said she was stunned when she saw this, in Mumbai. And she went up to talk to her and said, I have a question. And this lady said, well, what? She said, Who's doing the healing through you? She said, nobody asked me that question. And she told her. It was a guru, it was a teacher, who was doing the healing through her. But people don't ask. And you just did. Well, Sri Chakravarti knew who the words were. I don't. All I know is the words came to me. And that wasn't the first time I've heard words. That wasn't the first time I've been the recipient of that kind of stuff. I've got a new book coming out, Rafa, called, I should have said that to you instead of my article on economics. It's called Docking at the Mothership, Notes on Going Home. And it basically starts out with another message just like that, who I don't know where it came from. And that message came to my son in 1985 in Marin County, USA, all right, above San Francisco. All right. He was 12 years old, Rafa. All right. And Marin County is a very expensive neighborhood. All right. It's right across the Golden Gate. Beautiful. We're living in this house way in the hills. All right. And he's going to a school, a private school in Marin. He's 11 years old. And it was called the Integral Studies, School of Integral Studies. And the theory of the school was, it was for grammar school, grade school, okay? Like maybe grades 5 to high school, whatever, or 8, somewhere in there. It was open. It was a private school, all right? And it was a school on the base, on the theory that children are capable of learning a lot more but they're not exposed to these kind of ideas. All right. So Benjamin, through a series of coincidences, we find out about this school. He decides he wants to go there. So he's going to the school. All right. He's 11 years old at the time this conversation happens. I'm going to tell you. We're driving home. He's just read Plato's story of the cave. Are you aware of that? All right, where all these people, they're chained to the walls and in a dark cave, and they see this stuff in front of them, and they see these images, they hear sounds, and people talk about what it means. And one of the people escapes from the cave. All right, and he finds out there's a whole world out there. That was an illusion. Caves. It was, well, he's 11 years old. He's just read this. We're driving home. And he says, Dad, wonder if you just realized that the world isn't what it looks like. It's like the cave. Yeah. And you see a lot of people trying to make it better. Yeah. But they don't know it's not reality. It's not real. Yeah. Well, wonder if if you realize this and you want to make it better too. Oh, Rafa, I'm driving home. Benjamin says this. Wow. Well, wonder, that's a question. So what I did was I gave him a copy of the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, but a most beautiful copy that I've ever. In fact, you can find it. It's the PDF. It's on the. Oh, okay. I would recommend that you look for the translation by Witter Bynum, Witterbynam, or UM, Witter, Witter Bynum. He was a poet. He never read Chinese. His translation of the Tao Te Ching is stunning. When I was, this is show you the Dharma of my life. When I was in prison for all those years, okay, these books would come in from the publishers with their front covers torn off. They're called remainders. All right, nobody's ordering them anymore. So they rip off the front cover so you can't see it. So nobody's going to buy that book. And we get a box of these at Lompoc Federal Prison Camp in California, 1988, 87, whatever it is. I'm going through that box, and you know what I find? A copy of the Tao Te Ching by Winter Bynum. I had that book before I went in. There it is. Benjamin reads that book, and his comment was, he's right. This was 11 years old, right? Now it's spring. He's now 12, end of the school year. And he comes home and he says, he said, listen, I was just given an assignment. I got to write a 10-page paper on the role of the superconscious in art and culture.
You know what, it's amazing. You said this thing about learning, when we're young, we aren't exposed to certain things. Yes. And I have this idea, this understanding that learning isn't so much bringing new things into the brain, but remembering things or reigniting certain fires that were there before from another life or whatever.
Yes.
And yeah, like the story that you're telling, if you were to tell an adult, okay, so give this assignment to 11-year-olds, they would say, no, there's no way that they can know anything about this. But in fact, they really can. It's like you just expose young minds to things that wouldn't be at their reach, and they do find ways to say something about them, and that is so incredible for me.
Rafa, that's true in certain circumstances. There were kids who went out of school that didn't learn a goddamn thing. All right. But let me tell you a story what happens. So there is, what a 10-page paper on the role of the superconscious in art. I had no idea about that. And I didn't want to think about it. It's his goddamn paper. All right. But I couldn't do anything at all. Then it's getting towards the time to end of school. And I said, Benjamin, have you done your paper? And he goes, no. And I think I probably lost my temper because all I remember is my daughter, who was 8, said, Dad, we have guests. All right. That's all I remember. Dad, we have guests. All right. So I must have lost my, or something, or I was, over exuberant in my thought that it was time for him to write his paper. Well, what happened is the next day I see him starting to work on the computer, type stuff. Now, I want to tell you something, Rafa. He didn't type stuff on the computer before that, but he was doing it finger by finger, like he was doing it, okay? I didn't know what he was doing. And the computer itself, we had bought in 1985 from a Hollywood movie producer. All right, the guy who had done Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The guy who had done, his name was Michael Schultz, and we knew him through Marshall. And he had an old computer, and so we bought it, gave it to Benjamin, who was in school in Marin County in the 5th grade the year before, learning computer theory. This is Marin. Computer theory in the 5th grade. All right. So there he is, typing, this little kid. All right. Next morning, I'm driving him to school and I go, hey, Benj, do your essay? Yeah. Can I see it? Nope. All right. It's cool. Driving to school, gets off, College of Marin campus. The school was on the College of Marin campus. He's a kid. All right. Let him off at school, drive back home, go back in the house, and I see on the floor a piece of paper in his handwriting in pencil. One page. It's called The Superconscious. All right. And I'm starting to read it. And the words I is capitalized for a specific meaning. All right. It was incredible. I mean, I probably should go get, I don't know where I have a copy of it. I don't think, but it's stunning. It was channeled. We started out, the superconscious is a term invented by Carl Jung. Some believe it is all there is. Others believe it is the force that guides all beings, all things individually. Whatever it is that it is, and that is. Boom. All right, paragraph 1. Towards the end, it goes, you find yourself trapped in a taxi of mental mobility. You ask the driver where you are and where you're going. Receiving no answer, you become afraid. But you think of getting out, but you're too afraid to try to. The fall would be rough. So you eventually grab hold of the steering wheel yourself. And blah, blah, blah. And it said, eventually, you know you've reached your destination. No. Eventually, you know it's time for you to get out. You get out of the cab, taxi, and instantly remember who you are. This happens again and again until you realize you're the cab driver, taxi driver, and have been all the time. If you want to change reality, if perception creates reality, you must change perception to change reality. Or you might just stop judging. This would mean you would still exist in other people's perception of reality. The road is then smooth until the end. Rafa, 1 page long.
Yeah, powerful stuff from 11, 12-year-old. Incredible.
So I go to my
Wisdom,
computer
yeah.
to find it because I knew that's what he was finger picking. So I go and I find it, and it was hard. I find out later he locked it in so I couldn't get to it. But I figured a way out and printed it. So holy smokes, exactly. I wish I had that pencil paper, the one that he wrote first. Okay. So I drive to school at 3:00 to pick him up. He's coming around the corner. I'm waving this piece of paper that printed out, super. He looks at it. I said, hey, Benj, the teacher see this? He said, yeah. I said, what did he do? He said he didn't understand it and criticized it. He thought he was talking sociologically. They were in a taxi in society, and he told me to rewrite it. All right. So I said, what do you do? He said, I was going to tell him that he was going to give me a bad grade based on his limited understanding of what I've written. And then he said, then I realized that's just more judgment.
He had even incorporated the lesson in the thing.
So, Rafa, I have had experience, and I've had words come into myself before. Direct words. And I never knew who they're from. All right. I mean, one time, it was right after I'd been arrested and now sentenced to 10 years in prison. I'm in waist chains and leg irons in one of those prison vans, I guess you guys got them down there. Maybe you don't. All right. We're a police state, so we have them up here. All right. And I'm getting out, waist chain, leg iron. I'm just starting this 10-year sentence, 7-year sentence. It's going to be, but it's 10-year on paper. And I hear these words. You're going to meet someone here. Now, Rafa, I don't go to the guy next to me. Hey, motherfucker. Hey, homie, I just heard these words. I'm going to meet someone here. You don't say that. All right. So I get out. I'm in Sacramento County Jail. And I meet someone. This someone's mother gets me to Lompoc Federal Prison Camp. I mean, I'm starting a 10-year fresh. That's a high level security. I end up at a camp where Nixon's assistants, Haldeman and Ehrlichman, were doing time. It was known as Club Fed for it's easy. There was a golf course, I heard. I had never seen it. All right. In fact, I didn't know it was really there until I got out of prison. I'm hanging out in Marin County again. And one of these guys comes up who's, we're all that same age. And, he'd been at Lompoc, all right, the truck dealer. All right. And and he said, yeah, there was a golf course, one hole. It was built for H.R. Haldeman, Nixon's chief aide. And the day Haldeman left, they mowed it under. All right. This guy, this kid, his mother gets me there instead of some big house. I eventually got to a big house. All right. Later. For other reasons, that's my path. But that first week at camp at Lompoc, I meet Howard Hughes's banker, who tells me a story about a skim of $500 million that he had raised from the Saudi royal family for the Afghan resistance. He tells me this after he didn't tell it to me then. Norman Therian thought he was innocent, believed he was innocent, and believed he was going to get out. And 6 months later, when his appeal got turned down, he asked me to come to his cube, his room, and he wanted to show me some papers because he knew that I wrote, and he wanted me to write a story and get the story and put it away for safekeeping. And I agreed to do it. That's how I heard about the story. I was supposed to hear that story. He didn't tell that to anyone, but he was going to try and blackmail the Reagan White House to get him out. 6 months after he tells me the story, I'm in prison. You don't hear this. What else are you going to hear? I'm reading the LA Times, Rafa, and there in the LA Times, there's an article. $500 million found of Saudi U.S. funds commingled with Iran-Contra money raised from to help the Afghan resistance. There it is. They found that money that Norman told me about commingled with money from Iran-Contra. I'm reading this in the LA Times. You never heard about it. No one ever heard about it. And I know that everybody who read that article in the LA Times on December 23rd, 1986, read it and had no idea what it was or how it got there. I did, because Norman told me. Now, I don't think it's an excuse that I heard those words, that I'm going to meet somebody there. I don't think it was an accident that because of that person's mother, somebody's mother, that I made it my way to Lompoc Federal Camp, prison camp, to hear that story. That's how life is, Rafa. Or at least mine is. Now, let's get back to Bucky and the economic collapse. Because of Marshall, I know a lot about Bucky because I did a lot of reading. The year after, what happened is that Marshall puts this group together called the Positive Deviant Network, and very high-powered group of people, all right? Well, in 2007, in March, I present my 148-page paper that I had done on my own, where I predicted a severe economic collapse was coming. Severe. Now, let me tell you, Rafa, most of those people in that room were stinking rich. All right? High achieving, out of the box thinkers. And they didn't like at all what I was predicting. What I saw, this was 16 months before the 2008 financial collapse of Wall Street. There was not a sign of it. Oh, yeah, real estate market getting a little shaky. Big deal. Everybody was rolling. And I got up there and made this prediction. And it happened. It happened. All right? Now, The next year, Marshall had another at one of his events had it was called the Bucky Games because the Bucky had a game called the World Game. I don't you could Google it, World Game Buckminster Fuller, probably on Wikipedia. Stunning game. All right. It's a map of the world. You lay it out and you see all the resources. All right, all around the world, oil, food. And then on the map, it shows who's got all the money and how many people there are. It just showed here we all were in the United States with all the goddamn money, and all the rest of the world, they didn't have much of this shit. Bucky said a reallocation was absolutely not only right, but necessary. And that's what he said the purpose of the coming collapse was. The collapse, the insolvency of the United States, the largest bankrupt country, was going to be followed by the 149 other bankruptcies, finally releasing humanity from the grip under which they've been held in poverty and scarcity. He said this crisis is going to see the collapse of economic, political, and religious institutions.
So the nature of this collapse, from this quote that you're saying, the nature is actually positive because it will free us. So I'm wondering, because this from my personal perspective, I see economics as kind of like this country or organization, whatever, but this country owes money to this country, and then that one owes to that one, etc. And it's like a whole thing. And
it's a Ponzi scheme.
Exactly. In the
economics is a Ponzi scheme
exactly.
set up by the bankers to leech productivity and wealth off of producers, government, everything, all of us.
Because let me just ask you something connected to this thing that I'm trying to explain. It's like everybody owes everybody else money. So
Absolutely.
and everybody's scared because, oh, maybe I won't be able to pay it. But
Absolutely.
if we all were to just, or every country was to forgive the debt to each other, I don't think that there would be any. I mean, the numbers would fit perfectly, I think. But it's like everybody's so scared of making a move towards the sovereignty of everybody at the same time, or something like that. Do you see something similar?
Rafa, let me tell you why nobody makes that move. Because it won't work. It's sort of like during the anti-war period in Vietnam, in the United States, there's a theory. If you didn't go fight the war, there wouldn't be a war. Well, that was a nice thing to say, wasn't it, Rafa? And for those of us who refused to go, it was a great thing to do at a great cost. They weren't happy when you said, fuck you. All right? But in that same token, it was true that if everybody refused to go, there would be no war. But that's not how reality works. If it did, we wouldn't be having the crises that we're in now. Now, let me tell you something else that Bucky Fuller said. Bucky was a psychic. He saw this stuff happen. That's what happened. The next year, when Marshall had his World Game, he divided that group of Positivity Network people into 10 groups. And we each had to read 1/10 of Critical Path. Now, I never would have read Critical Path. He's a fucking engineer. He writes like he talks. I couldn't understand Bucky. I went to hear Bucky talk. I walked out of the room. I mean, I'm up there. There's all these people. Bucky for one of the greatest men. I mean, that's like the the Dalai Lama. He's a great mind. He's 81 years old. He's, everybody at Marshall's group revered this man, and he's worthy of reverence. But I hadn't been up there. I'm busy. I got my own life. I drive up there. There's Bucky. Hey, okay. I go, man. He had a speech, and he has a hearing problem, so he doesn't talk the way, so he's hard to listen to. All right, and I go in there, and I live there. I walked out of the room. I go on the other side of the room. They had a curtain down it with all these computers. So I burned up one of the computers and I turned the sound off. It was Pong, one of those games. Boom, boom. So I'm sitting there and all of a sudden, holy shit, Bucky's stuck in the other room. We can hear this. One of Marshall's admin runs in and starts screaming at me. What are you doing? You know, I've been trying to turn it off, but I didn't know how to run computers. Benjamin at least did. All right. That's me and Bucky. The next year, Marshall does Bucky's the World Game. All right. And he flies my friend Antal Fekete in from Hungary to be the keynote speaker. All right. And Marshall assigns us one section of critical path to read and report back home. So I'm reading this section. I never would have read it on my own, ever, ever, ever. Like I never would have met Howard Hughes' banker on my own, ever, ever, ever. Okay. So I'm reading this part of critical path, and this is what Bucky's saying. I made sure that all my predictions were so far in the future that the power structure would not see me as a threat. I thought, Bucky's short, I knew who Bucky was at A1. Everybody loved Bucky. I thought he was this naive idealist talking about a better world. All right. And then I find out the motherfucker knew exactly what kind of world we're living in. And he knew these people would be threatened by his vision of a better world for all. So he said, I made all my predictions 50 years in the future, and they'd trot me out of their parties and they'd find me amusing, where I got to say these things that nobody really thought was possible. And I got a forum. Wow. Shit. This is the Bucky I didn't know. You know what else Marshall told me about Bucky? He sat down with Bucky one day. It was either on the new moon or the full moon. I don't know where it was. Maybe, one of those moons. And Bucky took out his checkbook and gave all his money away. All of it. And Marshall said Bucky did this every month. Every month of his life. And I'm going to tell you why this happened. Because it revolves to our feelings about what we're about to undergo as a crisis, economic crisis. Bucky was grew up with his New England family. I mean, his great, great, great grandfather was one of the people at the Constitution Convention in 1776 from Massachusetts. All right, the Reverend Timothy Fuller. All right. You know what? He refused to sign the Constitution. Refused to sign the Constitution because it allowed for slavery. It did not disallow slavery. So he refused to sign it. His son, another Timothy Fuller, Reverend later, got in trouble at Harvard because he led a student revolt against the requirement of prayer before every meal, and you had to sit up straight when you ate. So he came from a family of rebels. All right. His great aunt Fuller was the first U.S. female news correspondent in the world. All right. So it comes down to Bucky. I mean, smart kids, incredible family. They sent him to Harvard. Okay. Bucky was born in 1895. So this probably happened in the early 1915, 1912. Sent him to Harvard. Kid shows up at Harvard. And what do? Well, he applied to the social clubs, drinking clubs. They were like fraternities at Harvard. All right. Now, Bucky is 5 feet 2 tall. He has thick glasses and he doesn't hear really well. Now, Rafa, not quite their idea of a Harvard man, is it? All right. Not quite, not at the stuff, not by their standards. So he doesn't get in. So Bucky takes all the tuition money and goes to New York and spends it on showgirls. Gets kicked out of Harvard. Family is quite upset. Well, 3 years later, because the kid is so fucking stinking smart, 5 generations of Harvard before him, they get the money and send him back to Harvard. Same thing happens. Applies to social clubs, they kick him out, takes all the money, goes to New York. This time, he is kicked out of Harvard with cause. All right? With cause. All right? Well, he eventually gets married. It's going to last him a whole life to his wife. And they have a kid, a daughter. This is before the pandemic. I think she was born during the pandemic. All right, sick, very sickly. And he's working in New York. And there's a Harvard, and he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. All right, he's, his father is a big time architect, he headed the company, and he's brilliant. And it's a Harvard Yale game, even though he didn't graduate from Harvard, he's still a Harvard man. All right, and so he's going to go to the annual big Harvard Yale game, football game. And I don't know if they have those down in Uruguay, but all the universities have those pennants, those with their names on it. They hung on the walls, university, blah, 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 what the crap that is. All right. And so they go to the station. He's getting on the train, and his daughter, she says, "Daddy, will you bring me home a cane?" That's because the pennants were on the canes, right? Yeah. So he goes off to the game. Harvard wins. Harvard wins. They party, comes back a day later. He's at the station, railway station, because they live out in Long Island, phones his wife. She's freaked. His daughter is sick. She had spinal meningitis before, so she's already sickly. He gets back home. She's in a coma. He's holding her in his arms, Rafa. She opens up her eyes and said, "Daddy, did you bring me back the cane?" He had forgotten, Rafa. He had forgotten. She closed her eyes and never opened them again. 3 years later, he's drinking like a fish, decides they have another daughter, decides his family would be better off without him, and he's going to kill himself. He's going to swim out in Lake Michigan. All right? Stories in New Yorker magazine. All right? Because he told the story. And fucking people who don't believe in that shit's happening, they say, "Oh, Bucky made up things to for his ideas." You know what Marshall told me? That Bucky saw words as artifacts. And you had to be very careful in what you said and how you used them. So that fucking biographer who couldn't explain Bucky's story about what happened in 1927 made up some crap about how it could come up. That I just read an article where the guy said the same goddamn thing because I know where he got it. I know his source was that biographer from Stanford who doesn't understand the world of spirit. Well, Bucky said, as he was thinking about committing suicide, the next thing he knew, he was 10 feet in the air, surrounded by dazzling white light, and he heard a voice. And the voice said, "This is not your life to throw away. Everything you think is true. If you dedicate your life to helping humanity, I will take care of you." Bucky said he stopped drinking. He went into the silence for almost 2 years, almost didn't speak to anybody. And when he came out, he was the Bucky Fuller that we all know today. And you know what Bucky said in the middle of the goddamn book, Critical Path? If it took a personal crisis to turn my life around, why would it be any less for humanity?
Yeah, totally. And we are so dependent on this Ponzi scheme of a system that we currently inhabit. We are so dependent that exactly nobody would dare to take the first step to
Rafa,
to clear the deck. So the deck has to be cleared some other way, I guess.
Rafa, one of my metaphors about it is we're slaves on a debt plantation. And the debt plantation is huge, it's almost in foreclosure. And even though we're only slaves, we're all afraid the goddamn plantation is going to go broke. Because what are we going to do then? How are we going to get fed? Where's the money going to come from? So NASA has gone to London to get a refi. And all of the slaves are praying to the Holy Spirit, to God himself, that the plantation gets refinanced. So we
or that they open a
being,
plantation in Mars.
so we can continue being slaves.
Yeah, as a teenager, I saw all of this like so clearly. You know, I was kind of the classic rebel without a cause or whatever. That's what my parents would call me. But I would see how the world was so unstable, how the like this thing in the Bible of building your house on sand or on rock. And I saw how unstable everything was. But yeah, I wasn't able to fully articulate it in a way that that the adults would listen to me. But yeah, nowadays, thanks to my own path and my own dharma, I have this show where I can speak with people like yourself. Maybe since we are kind of close to rounding up the hour, so okay, if we could like focus in I don't know if you have like timelines or maybe we kind of have given an idea that there's this, and everybody's kind of aware that there's this collapse coming, but what to expect, and maybe what solutions or kind of steps people can take to be prepared, especially spiritually, for an event such as that.
You know, Rafa, if you had read my article, which you said spooked you out, you didn't want to read it. On the last page, there's a short little poem. And it says, when houses are built on sand and money is no longer gold, and the end times have just begun, and the end times are just beginning, blah, blah, blah. Then it says, what does it say?
I have it open here. Want me to read it?
Yeah. Read it. Go to the last page.
When houses are built on sand and money is based on debt, and the end times are beginning, you ain't seen nothing yet. Gold and silver will help when money is no longer gold, but only faith will give you the strength to make it to the end of the road. It's pretty good. Have faith, man.
Huh?
Yeah.
Should have read the end of the should have read the end of the goddamn article, Rafa. Rafa, I want to say something.
Yeah.
This was exactly where we were when, because, you know, I've been saying this since after I gave my talk at the Positivity Network. I got a worldwide reputation on money. I mean, at one point, Rafa, if you Googled my name in around 2010, 2009, 62 pages of references. All right, that's a lot of references. I was writing a lot. All right. And I knew people didn't want to hear what I wanted to say. You know, I mean, who wants to hear that stuff? You know? And so Regina Meredith, she interviewed me on Gaia.com, we were at the same place. And she said, Darryl, what do we tell people? And I said, I was stopped. And I told her something that had come to me when I was in prison, those words. We are but temporal lights passing through. No, we are eternal lights passing through temporal darkness. We cannot be harmed. We are love itself. That's what I told her a year ago when her program aired on Gaia. Well, I've thought of another thing to say. The way to prepare for those times that are coming is to be in the moment. Right now. Be in the moment. Be aware. Feel the energy. Feel the love. Feel the currents. Closing your eyes isn't going to stop it from happening. It's going to just make it like hell when the fucking shit happens. The building's going to go down and your eyes are closed. You think that's going to help because you got your eyes closed? If you're going to make it through, your eyes better be open because that building's going to crash. But if you listen, if you're quiet, if you stay present, you will be guided. Not all of us are going to make it through, but that doesn't matter anyway, because we are eternal lights. I may not be here when this thing happens. We are eternal lights. Who knows? But I do know this, Rafa. If you're real quiet, and if you're in the moment, and if you listen, you will be led.
Darryl, Schoon, thank you so much. I really love your stories. Sometimes they feel like they are kind of long, you know, but eventually they kind of reach, they connect to the thing that we're speaking, because if people look back to everything that you've been speaking during this conversation, you know, it all ties up into this. It was stories of people hearing voices, stories of knowledge of who we are, right?
Yeah.
The power of spirit, and yeah, no doubt, coming from you with such a great background in spiritualism. Yeah, those stories, because we are very used to in this and I am this way as well. I have an ascendant in Capricorn, so I'm like very rational sometimes, and I'm like looking for the more concise and direct answer, but luckily I have had a very interesting path myself, and I'm able to listen with my heart as well, and I really appreciate everything that you share. Yeah.
Rafa, everyone here on this planet is here for a reason. All right. And we don't know each other's reasons. We don't even know our own. All right. And yet I know what it looks like. You know, I'm 77, so I've been through the mill, you know. And I was joking with a friend of mine. He is a fund manager in London who thinks exactly like I do, but he's very metaphysical. All right. And I said, well, you know, I said, you know, I got these interviews coming up, and they should have a thing on a warning. Do not follow this man's advice, or follow his advice at your own risk. And none of us like the difficulty. None of us, and in these times especially, it is hard to see because of our perception of who we are in that limited egoic temporal self. After 77 years, Rafa, on this planet, I have more faith and more love than I've ever had. And I'm happier than I've ever been, because I know how it's going to end. And the ending is just a continual beginning. But this phase that we're going through is only a phase. It's only because we've chosen to be in this intense school right now at this particular time. You know, my joke about it is when it's over and we're spirits floating around in the ether, and you hear the music and you hear a voice. The voice says, where were you last? And you sort of think about it. You go, on a planet called Earth. And everybody gets really silent. They move away from But that's a joke, Rafa. It's a joke.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a very intense school. Definitely I see us, and for the past few years, I see, at least with what I can see through technology, social media, etc., this connection between people, I see us and I sense us getting more expansive in our identity. I see that we are beginning to understand more and to accept more and be more in contact with the fact that we are something greater than the body as well as the body. And I think we are kind of creating this how to call it, this kind of line of consciousness between the small ego and the greater thing, in order to be in both perceptions at the
At
same
once,
time.
at the same
And
time.
I think that will be a very good kind of superpower that we might develop. It's not a superpower that we develop, it's more a remembrance, like children learning, a remembrance of who we are that will automatically turn off fear and turn on our...
In an instant, Rafa, what I want to say is this. I had that experience when I was in prison. I wasn't looking for it, but like I said, I was meditating like I never meditated before. And I got there. I'm not there now. And I know the difference between that state and this state I'm in now. But I know it's there. And it is so different than this state. It is so different. It's a suspension of judgment. And it's not even a suspension. You didn't suspend it. It got suspended. I mean, maybe, you know, it's like the channel got turned off of strife and aloneness and fear and uncertainty. The feed got turned off, Rafa. And what was left was...
Thank you so much, Darryl. So I'll include a link to your website in the description of the video.
Yeah, it's not up yet. My website went down 2 months ago. GoDaddy really screwed it up.
Oh.
We've had to put another one together. It's not up yet. That's why I sent you the article. I said it's not posted because my website's not ready. But I expect it to be up in the next week.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I will include it. It's drschoon.com.
Yeah, drschoon.com.
Amazing. Yeah, so people can go check that out there, and yeah, keep the faith, and and remember to push the button before you exit this life, or you'll have to come back and push it again and try to remember. Yeah. So thank you so much, Darryl. I really appreciate you coming on, and we'll see each other soon. Okay.
Well, thank you, Rafa.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.